Hello, I'm Andy, and thank you for tuning in into this video on High on Life.
Where are we going?
To find somebody who can help. You ever been to the big city? Because you're about to, except that it's a space city. It's a huge space city.
Developed by Squanch Games and featuring the talent of Justin Roiland, High on Life promises to deliver an exciting and captivating gaming adventure filled with absurdity and satire. In a world where games have become serious business, High on Life is a refreshing change of pace. This action-adventure game offers a unique blend of humor, adventure, and action that will keep players hooked for hours on end. For starters, let's briefly examine High on Life's story. The game's premise is that Earth has been taken over by aliens who use humans as hallucinogenic drugs. Our protagonist then embarks on an absurd journey to take revenge on the extraterrestrial drug cartel responsible.
Aliens were real.
The game's story is filled with comedic elements and characters that are not afraid to be inappropriate.
You just paused the game. This doesn't help at all. Are you an idiot? Everyone knows pause.
One of the most unique and entertaining aspects of the game is the arsenal of weapons at your disposal. These guns, called Gatlians, are characters in their own right. Each Gatlian possesses its own distinct personality, which adds depth and complexity to the gaming experience. The voice acting performed by accomplished actors further enhances the immersion and character development of these weapons. Overall, the inclusion of Gatlians adds a notable level of depth and intrigue to the game. But High on Life is not just about its talking guns, it's about the characters and the story as a whole. As I journeyed through the game's space odyssey, I encountered a wide array of quirky aliens, each with their own ridiculous backstory and motivations. Some of these aliens get more character development than others, but overall, High on Life manages to deliver a compelling and unique story through the use of its narrative elements and techniques.
Is it Fergal withdrawals?
Does that make you happy? Oh, you love that, don't you?
As I progressed through the game, the leaders of the G3 cartel were my main targets, and each encounter was more thrilling than the last. The game succeeded in making each boss fight interesting and unique through the use of strange and often humorous situations. Whether I was killing a tied-up NPC after eliminating their family rival, or witnessing the death of a boss while fighting its automated suit, High on Life succeeded in enhancing my immersion into the game's world through these absurd and almost meta-like events. These moments were not only exciting and unexpected, but also added a layer of uniqueness to the game's world, making it feel more alive and hilarious. The game's ability to blend humor and serious moments creatively really stood out to me and made this experience more enjoyable. The boss fights in High on Life are not only challenging, but also provide a memorable and engaging experience that I will not forget anytime soon. But while the experience has its strong points, unfortunately some narrative elements in High on Life are in fact a downside of this game. But that's something I'll come back to in just a second. The gameplay of High on Life is a perfect match for the game's overall tone and atmosphere. As players engage in firefights, they will find themselves utilizing their arsenal of talking weapons to dispose of waves of enemies. These weapons feel responsive and are honestly a blast to use in most scenarios. Each gun in the game has a specific use case, which is complemented by its alternate fire mode. Whether you're shooting globs of goo from Kenny's tragically called Trickle, or my controlling a foe using Creature's Children, firing the guns in High on Life manages to feel unique and enjoyable. But the utility of your arsenal doesn't just stop at slaughtering enemies. The alternate fire modes also provide an original way to explore your environment. For example, Kenny's Globshot can be used to pull down certain barriers, or Sweezy's bubbles can be used to slow down time in certain unexplorable sections of terrain. This mechanic is enhanced even further by certain gadgets acquired throughout the story. In a way, as players acquire more gun characters, the platforming becomes even more fun and complex, since our protagonist will have a variety of different possibilities to navigate around the map. This mechanic also incentivizes players to revisit levels, since they'll now be able to use new tools to get around previously inaccessible parts of the map. When it comes to the graphics of High on Life, I believe the visuals are especially fitting for the game's overall tone and feel. The majority of the characters in this game have a squishy, slimy appearance which may not be to everyone's taste. I found it to be unique, and it added to the game's immersion. The Scoopia aesthetic style doesn't extend to the game's environments though, which are instead inspired by a cyberpunk otherworldly look. Although High on Life may not match most popular AAA releases in terms of graphics, I believe its visual style is well suited to the game's humor and tone, making it a noteworthy element of immersion. Speaking of immersion, the audio design that Squanch Games managed to put together once again succeeds in selling this squishy and slimy aesthetic to players in a way that it's quite honestly a bit weird, but believable. From Kenny's globshot or Gus's reload sound to enemies' bullets and movement, most of High on Life's effects enhance the gameplay experience by making it more engaging. It's subtle, but in my opinion, the audio design of this game is a standout feature, and it's done in a way that it's quite honestly, weird, but it works. It adds to the game's charm and uniqueness. All in all, High on Life's gameplay has its highs and lows, but thankfully it manages to fall on the former for most of the time. It's quite difficult for me to examine and define the pros and cons of this game, since I'm quite conflicted about some of the following topics myself. But it's imperative to understand that whilst this game conveys a certain atmosphere and charm, it's not for everyone. Starting with its humor, High on Life is reminiscent of the comedic style of its creator. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's almost impossible to separate this gaming experience from Roiland's previous works. High on Life reflects his humor, his comedic style. But what sets this game apart, at least in my opinion, is that every single element of High on Life is done well enough to sell this wacky and ridiculous space odyssey-like adventure. It's immersive as much as it is a metagame-like experience. I can't recall how many times I heard the voice actors break character and start talking about other things, which only adds to the game's charm in my opinion. Considering the noticeable narrative quirks of this game, like Kenny's stuttering, Sweezy's irreverent tone, or Creature's oddly positive attitude, High on Life really is not for everyone. I have no problem telling you that I quite enjoy this game, because to me it feels different from any other gaming experience I've had in quite some time. The last game that managed to capture this feeling, I think it was South Park: The Stick of Truth, but that was a long time ago and in a whole different gaming genre, so take that as you will. But is everything funny and well made though? No, unfortunately no. In terms of the cons of High on Life, one aspect that stood out to me is the dialogue. While I appreciate the humor and wackiness of the game, there have been a few instances where I felt a bit overwhelmed by the sheer amount of dialogue present in this game. Luckily, Squanch Games have implemented an option that allows players to tone down the amount of dialogue, but in my opinion I wouldn't recommend it, since dialogues and jokes are a core part of the game's humor. It's a double-edged sword, as on one hand, the dialogue adds to the game's charm, but on the other hand, it can be overwhelming for some players. Another issue that I encountered during my time with the game is the presence of bugs and performance issues. While it's true that some patches have been released to address said issues, I still experienced some weird errors and glitches during my playthrough. I managed to complete the game without any hard locks, but in my experience, the game was not without its hiccups. One of the most glaring cons of High Life, in my view, is the lack of variety. Starting with the firefights, it's impossible not to notice the lack of enemy variety in the game. Even though your weapons will often comment and express their accurate opinion on the plays you're making, I don't think they can really compensate for the lack of enemy variety you'll find in most levels. The lack of variety also extends to the game's location, as you'll be navigating between only 3 planets with limited locations, and there will be many times where you'll need to revisit previously explored locations. While I'm not inherently against this, it did catch my attention, and I believe it's worth mentioning it as a drawback of the game. In conclusion, High on Life is a bold, unorthodox shooter that excels in its outrageous humor, whimsical setting and plot. The game's one-of-a-kind and quirky, profanity-prone weapons are a standout feature that I believe holds the experience together for the vast majority of the time. And although it also has its fair share of drawbacks, this should not discourage you from giving it a shot. This game is currently on Xbox's Game Pass, which lets you play a plethora of games for just $1 a month, for the first month at least. I think this is an extremely good way to enjoy this experience without committing a full $60 for it. So anyways, thank you so much for listening to this review. I think High on Life is really unique, and honestly, worth every penny, even if you buy it at $60. But for $1 a month, you know, it's just a no-brainer to me. So thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked it, please subscribe, comment, like the video. It really helps me out a lot. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.